Ladies and gentlemen, it's now time for our first star panel of the day, identifying the right market for exporting. As an exporter, there are several factors that could contribute to an MSME's choice of export market, such as tradition. Which countries are traditionally your big buyers? Demand, which countries or regions are likely to seek your products? Geopolitical climate, how favorable is the political environment of your selected market, etc. Also, it is important for the exporter to understand what are the different strategies available to test the markets. How can products be adapted to meet the requirements of the new market, the risks involved, and more. This also becomes important as India is working on new free trade agreements with various countries. To delve more deeply into this subject, let me quickly welcome our speakers on the dais in alphabetical order. Our first panelist is Mr. Ajay Sahai, Director General and CEO of 35,000 Exporter-Strong Federation of Indian Export Organizations, set by the Ministry of Commerce and Private Trade in 1965 for promoting India's exports. Dr. Sahai was earlier Joint Directorate General of Foreign Trade in the Policy Division of DGFT, where he played a key role in formulation of the foreign trade policy from 1996 to 2003. He has considerable experience in the area of customs and excise and has also functioned as the designated authority for the passbook scheme with the Delhi Customs. Joining him next is Mr. Bhupen Wakankar, Director, Global Trade, Amazon India. Mr. Wakankar has more than 20 years of experience in strategy, technology, and product management. He joined Amazon in 2015 to lead India delivery experience, and currently he is leading Amazon's global selling program in India with over 1 lakh Indian exporters selling made in India products to customers globally. Our third speaker joining the panel is Mr. Shekhar Bhandari, President of Global Transaction Banking at Kotak Mahindra Bank. Mr. Shekhar has experience of over 25 years and currently is responsible for technology, foreign exchange, international trade finance, and cross-border payments, culminating into liquidity and working capital solutions for the entire bank. Calling our fourth speaker on the stage, Mr. Sunil Tyagi, Senior General Manager of International Cooperation at the National Small Industries Corporation, a Government of India enterprise supporting MSMEs in the country. Mr. Tyagi's experience ranges from organizing various technology missions, business delegations of small and medium enterprises of India and various countries, to organizing technical and business alliances. Please welcome our next panelist on the stage, Mr. Vinod Sharma, Managing Director at film capacitors manufacturing firm Deki Electronics, that has recently diversified to serve the EV industry by offering chargers and an innovative parallel battery drive. Mr. Sharma is currently the chairman of CII, National Electronics Committee, and was earlier the chairman at the Electronics and Computer Software Export Promotion Council from 2012 to 2014. He also served as a president at Electronic Industries Association of India from 2002 to 2004. And to moderate this panel, may I please invite Mr. Gautam Khattar, Principal, Pricewaterhouse and Company LLP on the stage. Gautam has around 20 years of experience in customs and tax consulting. He has frequently interacted with the Ministry of Finance and Commerce and the tax authorities, including various commissionerates on matters involving valuation of imported goods, duty exemptions, usage of incentive schemes, and setting up and functioning of units in SEZs. Please join me, ladies and gentlemen, in welcoming our esteemed panelists up on the stage.
Thank you everyone for taking our time today. I hope I'm audible. Yeah? Great. Very warm welcome to all the panelists here today. And I think Dr. Mishra has already set the context with the numbers which we saw. Clearly, very opportune time for us to be sitting and discussing, as I think manufacturing for exports in the new markets or manufacturing for exports is the new mantra in India rather. Especially looking at the global trade efforts of India. I believe there is a need for all of us sitting here, the MSME sectors, to fully participate in this endeavor to make India a 5 trillion economy. In that context today, the subject which we are discussing on market strategy for exports, I think clearly gains importance. especially to make India most cost-effective export hub, and also, as we heard, leverage the free trade agreements which India has signed. Maybe with that, I would just move to the first question which I have. And maybe Mr. Vinod, I can start off with you. With your industry experience, as we just heard, the companies have actually diversified into newer technologies. How would you see the importance of identification of the right market? And more importantly, what are the audience here? How should they, what are the helps they can derive in identifying new markets?
Thanks very much, Gautam. So very, very pertinent to what we are discussing today. And my simple answer is that if I had unlimited resources, then I would do what I call carpet bombing. I would take a plane, a chartered plane, go all over the world and ask them where my products are available or sold. Fortunately, this is an era of precision bombing. As Mr. Mishra made out in the morning, there's a lot of statistical information available. And that statistical information, what we do also in our company, is you draw a global map of where do these trade flows, where do they originate, your kind of product, where are their supply chains, and where are they exporting. You can have actually, and we have in our own office, a global map of what happens to a component like I make a film capacitor. And not only do you make a map for today, you also draw a trend chart to see what has been happening in the last 4 or 5 years, right? And then you put out some stickers, red lines, for areas which might be difficult for you to go in. Maybe the non-tariff barriers are too high, the cost of qualifying what we call market access might be stringent for whatever reasons. And sometimes it can be as simple as logistics. I mean, for us, Latin America is a great market, but it's just too far for the kind of components we make. So having identified that, you are then able to come with yellow zones on your map, which tell you these are your potential probable markets. And in my opinion, the next step would be to actually start building your network of people there. It could be agencies, it could be consultants, could be trade experts. Of late, I must mention that also our foreign offices are beginning to also be very helpful. So one could also approach them. And the idea is that those yellow zones, you begin to put question marks and say, are these ideal markets for me or not? And like I said, from the old days, I know exports was done by a lot of people because I had a cousin in Canada, or because I just had a flight going to Germany and I tried doing whatever I had to do. Obviously, those times have changed. And fortunately, technology, the network of experts, and of course, statistics helps us in that direction.
I think rightly said, the technology and data is right now the most important aspects which we all are looking at. Just changing gears and maybe coming to Mr. Tyagi on some of the incentives which we've seen offered by the Ministry of MSME. How are they creating linkage, sir, when you see between MSMEs and other countries, more importantly with respect to creating alliances and providing the exporters the relevant international exposure to the market, international market?
Thank you, Gautam. Before we really explore the markets abroad or create linkages, I think it's very important to build the competence of MSMEs. And raw material plays an important role in creating the competence. Getting the raw material at the right time, at the right place is very important. So I'll start from here, then I come to your this thing. I come from National Small Industries Corporation, which is a Government of India enterprise under Ministry of Micro and Small Enterprises. So the major role which NSIC plays is getting the raw material assistance to micro and small enterprises. We aggregate the requirements of raw material of small enterprises and then negotiate with the bulk suppliers of particular raw material. It could be steel, it could be iron, it could be aluminum, it could be bitumen, number of raw materials. So, and then we negotiate with them, and whatever the advantage we get on price is passed on to micro and small enterprises. And we ensure that they get the right kind of raw material at right kind of a time to those pieces. Once this competency is built, then it's how to explore the market. Here I would like to say that Ministry of Micro and Small Enterprises has a scheme called International Cooperation Scheme, where they assist micro and small enterprises to participate in international exhibitions. You'll find around 700 international exhibitions on their website. And you can explore which exhibition you want to participate based on your research, based on your product, and based on your market. It gives you a chance to explore the market in a particular country. What they provide is, NSIC is one of the implementing agencies, and assistance which you get is 100% reimbursement of the airfare, and reimbursement of the space charges, which is maximum to up to rupees 3 lakhs. And you're also reimbursed freight charges and registration costs. So it gives you an opportunity to participate in that particular exhibition and explore your market, find out the right market or expose your product. So this helps in exporting. Then, as NSIC, we have linkages with various similar organizations in different countries. So what we do is we assess the requirements of micro and small enterprises from India. And through our linkages, we expose those inquiries to our counterpart agencies and try to find linkage for micro and small enterprises in India. And whatever queries we are receiving, either for export or import, is placed on our website, nsic.co.in. You can explore it on our website, on What's New and under International Cooperation portal. That is how we assist micro and small enterprises in exploring the marketing. Besides that, we also organize their B2B meetings. Either we organize a delegation from India to abroad, or from abroad to India, and organize one-to-one business meetings based on their areas of interest. So this creates linkages. Recently, we had taken a delegation led by Secretary MSME to Taiwan, and which focused on healthcare industry. So, we are pleased that a lot of agreements have been signed in that sector. And we had approached the cluster in Visakhapatnam, that is Andhra Pradesh MedTech zone. So a lot of industries had gone there, and we have got useful linkages for them. And we are inviting some delegations from South Korea, from Russia, from other countries also. And we have queries basically on healthcare industries, food processing industries, even the countries like Papua New Guinea, which are far away. They have inquired from us machinery for coir board products. So that is how we create linkages, and I request MSMEs to explore our site, to get in touch with us, give us your requirements. We'll explore and find out a market for you. That is how. Another thing is we have a B2B portal, msmemart.com. Mr. Mishra had also mentioned that. There you can put up your profile, your queries, and this MSME Mart portal gives you information about trade leads, not only from India, from other countries also. You can buy, you can sell your products through that portal. It also gives you information on global trade leads. So you can participate in global tenders through that portal. And the fees is reimbursable by Ministry of MSME. 75% of the fees is reimbursed. So that is how MSMEs can take benefit of this. Another scheme has been introduced by Ministry of Micro and Small Enterprises under the International Cooperation Scheme is capacity building of first-time exporters. The first-time exporters who want to register with the EPCs, their fees are reimbursed. And one of the component is the quality and testing. MSMEs have to ensure that their product which they want to export has the quality which is required by the international market. So for that, they have to spend a huge amount of money in getting their product tested. For that, Ministry has introduced a scheme where they reimburse a partial cost of their testing, which is, I think, 75% of the cost, but maximum up to 1 lakh rupees. So these are some of the initiatives taken by NSIC and Ministry of MSME to enhance the capacities and explore the market abroad for micro and small enterprises.
Great. A lot of schemes there, and maybe this opportune time, Mr. Sahai, for you to just come in. How, in your experience, you've seen these enablers, these incentives change over the past few years?
In fact, I'm firmly of the view that subsidy or incentives are given for export to address the cost disability factor of Indian economy. In fact, at a time when rupee was not allowed to float freely, we have a scheme like cash supplementary support and the replenishment. The moment we have allowed the rupee convertibility on the current account, we have dispensed with that. Today for exports, except for the interest equalization scheme, there is no subsidy scheme for exports. All are the duty neutralization scheme, which are permitted within the ambit of the agreement on subsidies and countervailing measures. We have to bear in mind that India has graduated to a level where we are not enjoying the special and differential treatment to provide for export subsidy. We have crossed $1,000 per capita GNP in 2016, 17, 18. Some of the schemes which were in the nature of subsidies were challenged by the US. Unfortunately, we lost the case in the dispute settlement board. We have moved to the appellate body and the decision is pending there. On its own, the government of India has dispensed with some of the schemes which has nature of subsidy. For example, the duty-free scheme of trimming and embellishment or the merchandise export incentive scheme. Today, we have a scheme which provides zero rating. For the customs duty, we have parallel scheme of duty drawback, advance authorization, EOU, SCZ. For the GST, we have the IGST refund or ITC refund. For the taxes which have not been integrated into the GST or the product and services which have not been brought into the GST, or where there is an embedded taxes, we have brought the ROTTEP scheme for rest of the sector and ROCTL scheme for apparel and made-up sector. So all these schemes basically provides me exactly what is permitted under the WTO norms. Interest equalization scheme is definitely a scheme which provide an element of subsidy. Fortunately for us, that scheme has not been challenged by the US. And the scheme was brought because there is definitely the interest differential between India and our competing countries. When we are talking about the export, for export, the level playing field is not your competitor with your other competitors in India. You are talking about your competitors in other countries also. So if my MSMEs are getting credit at 12%, they are competing with the country where their interest rates are 4%, they are outpriced in the market by 8%. So for that purpose, the interest equalization scheme has been brought on. And luckily for us, there has been around 23% increase in the allocation for the interest equalization. The scheme as of now provides the MSME manufacturer with 3% subvention and to MSME traders for 410 tariff line, 2% subvention. We are working with the government to increase the subvention because in the last 6 announcements, RBI has already increased the key rate substantially, and that makes a case for that. But I feel that as the cost of credit comes down in India, probably these schemes will also vanish. I'm personally of the view that subsidy should be for a limited period with a definite purpose. Otherwise, it brings inefficiency into the system. And that's why whenever any subsidy is announced, I would like to have a sunset clause also into the subsidy so that the industry knows in advance that they have so much time available to either scale up their production or achieve competitiveness, else a scheme will not be there. So in today's context, when we are going by the WTO discipline, there is not much scope for subsidy. I think we have to look into the other issues, the issue of infrastructure, the issue of logistics costs to support exports. In times to come, we have to be on our own.
I think rightly pointed out, sir, given the WTO challenges, the time for subsidies is no longer there. So we need to stand on our own, and there are other parameters which we need to look at, and probably that's appropriate time, Shekhar, for you to come in your banking experience. How do you think now, moving the needle, we spoke about what is the importance, and there are now certain challenges on subsidies, but what, as a strategy, should the exporters look at? What should be their strategy while testing new markets, more importantly? And what are the risks they should be alive to when they are going into the new markets? So some thoughts around that?
No, thank you. And the banker will always tell you good about economy, good about finance, and some part of risk. In my mind, the part one, which was covered by, I think, Mr. Sahai, India does require a significant amount of work to be done on exports. There are various, I think, various ways in which it is being getting supported. But as far as our share in the entire world is concerned, it needs to increase. And it will increase only when the second part of strategy and the work which we do, I think, comes in and puts into picture. There's part one, which is done at the government level, where you have trade partnerships, trade corridors being done. If a UK and a UAE or an Australia, so Australia, UAE executed, UK, I think, in the process, a couple of more. And if you have those corridors of 50 billion, 100 billion, 150 billion, you generally realize that you will see a significant amount of help, initiative, policy processes, clearances happening for exporters to be there. What is in it for exporters? That they identify all these markets. What is the product which will be sold well? What is the product which will be, they will be competitive at? And I do feel that there are a couple of products which are significantly superior from India point of view that needs to be manufactured more, so you require more manufacturers. Services has already had its own good contribution. I think software being the most important one, IT is, I think, serving them, and whether there is people, knowledge, and solutions. So you realize the strategy which was done in 1990 to 2020, you had more number of engineers, more number of people qualifying, India actually becoming the knowledge pool for the world, and then the services seeing the growth which is there now. How do we transform similar things in few other areas? Can it happen in textiles, which is, we saw the numbers as stated by Mr. Mishra at -1%. That has been the strength for India. We used to be called as Manchester. Is there a scope? I guess yes. Is there an opportunity? I do feel yes. Is the cost of production gone high? Is there a way we can have strategically addressed that? I think that is possible. And in my mind, a similar stream of 5 years, 10 years, and etc. can happen. A good financing scheme, I think, which come from the entire sector, including the banking, becomes an important part. Insurance and credit insurance supported, export insurance being supported, can be a big factor, I think, which helps to ensure that we are able to facilitate these sectors strategically and I think grow them and take it to the next level. Gems and jewelry industry, a classic example where the similar expertise lies, can have exactly on a similar fashion. So an important part, there is government, there is regulations, there are exporters, there is banking and the financing aspects, and there are policy and the processes aspect which gets sorted and becomes more convenient. Subsidy, I think, as Mr. Sahai said, is to an extent, I think it is good because it supports the exporters to pitch in with extra muscle. But yes, if on the on its own, if we are not able to grow that well, it is not sustainable. And that international market comes, I say, less of price, more of quality. And India needs to move into equal amount of quality zone as well, besides the price part. Many of us think that it is only the price which differentiates us. Internationally, the prices have gone up. It has significantly gone up. The manufacturers which used to borrow at sub 1%, I think their cost has gone up by more than 250 basis points to 300 basis points. So technically, if their cost has gone up, it is an opportunity for us to ensure, and actually the right time, that we have focus, we have growth, and a good amount of financing which supports on the strategy side as well as the policy side.
Great. Maybe I just want to jump back to Vinod for a second in terms of just hearing this on the financing bit and how the global headwinds are coming in, from an industry experience, how have you seen that impacting, and any learnings which we want to share with the audience here?
Thank you for bringing me in. It was, in fact, my mind was twitching with ideas right now. So thank you for bringing it. In exports, we always talk about one thing, and all of us know we call it export competitiveness, but cost is an extremely important item. And a lot of those zones that are identified as yellow turn red because for some reason I'm not able to meet that cost aspiration of the customer. So what I did was actually wrote a book called Value Magics. So if you look at valuemagics.com, it's all there. But the premise was this: I do not buy anything which is the cheapest. Financial Express hired this nice banquet hall. It's not the cheapest one in the city. We are all wearing some nice jackets. They're not the cheapest jackets in the world. But when we go out there to sell, our export marketing team tells us, hey, everybody wants the cheapest. So first of all, that's not true. Everybody wants what they would call value for money. And every single market has a very different understanding of what that big word value means. And so in our book, we actually said that. So, and I say because I have a co-author, Hans, a Dutchman, who helped me do this whole very detailed exercise. And we argued that there are only 5 reasons why people buy anything. The benefits. So you buy it for design, you buy it for quality, you buy it for speed, which means when do you want that item. You buy it for image, and you buy it for the services that you may want it. You don't have to remember that, but this is true of milk powder, it's true of a writing pen, it's true of agricultural produce. And when you say something is a commodity, it is because you're not looking at the benefits. It's atta, for example. You're looking at only the sacrifice you're making, which is probably the cost for getting some kind of atta. But if I needed atta only for pizzas, again, there is a differentiation that's coming in. So depending on what is it that the customer wants, and each market segment would obviously want something different, I need to confront that with the realities of my company. I make capacitors that are good for lighting, that are good for industrial applications. And tomorrow I want to go and pitch it to a nuclear fission company in America. It's not going to work. But unfortunately, when we do this exercise, and I'd like to say what Mr. Sahai said very well, the age of subsidies, incentives is over. If there is one thing I need from the government, is this, is the export skilling. We have not trained our people to be able to think in this very precise, targeted, value-oriented perspective. So till you don't do that, if a marketing person doesn't know all this, he only knows one thing: the guy told me to give me a lower cost. And so I think that game is over. And today is a fantastic opportunity because a cost leader like China is exiting that market for several reasons. And several people who are asking for it are not necessarily asking for a cost alternative. They are actually looking for a value alternative. And that value alternative, for example, could be that we are better at intellectual property rights, which they were fed up of what was happening in China. It could be that we are a more environmentally conscious, a more environmentally cultured country. And we need to put the standards around that to be able to prove that. So I think this is a very golden moment for us in our export history, where we could look like an alternative. So people say China plus one. And I say, actually, if we play our game right, it will be anywhere but China. Because we can get this combination of quality, environmental consciousness, great values, honesty, transparency. All this is very important to some of the markets that we aim at. But we often forget that.
Relevant point. I know, Bhupen, you are waiting. Just give me 1 minute. One more question since it came up. Maybe Mr. Tyagi or Sir, you may. On upskilling, what is, since for the newer markets, I think what is essential also is how do we upskill? And we need to have, before getting in, we need to get the right sales set in India. So any programs, which you believe are relevant, which maybe should be run or are already going on?
In fact, if you look into the union budget of 2022, there is a program which has been announced for upskilling and reskilling also. And I think this is an area where China definitely has edge over India. When we are talking about the wage arbitrage, it is one part of that. China to a large extent has been able to offset the higher wages with increasing productivity, though I agree that there is a limit to that. What China did it, China not only employed the worker in a particular area, they start upgrading their skill also, because they knew that 6 months, 1 year down the line, the worker needs to be employed into a more productive one. Unfortunately, we started late into that, and probably we are still at a pilot stage as of now. But I'm pretty sure this is something where the industry should come forward. I only look into the government as an enabler. So the good thing is that in the skilling part, it's a government and in companies joint venture, which is working very well. And in some of the areas, it has been successful. Not so for the reskilling or upskilling as of now.
But this is one area where subsidies can come in for...
No, absolutely. I'm for the subsidy. If you bring a subsidy, let us say for 5 years, my objective is to reskill the worker, I'm all for that. I'm not for an open-ended skilling, because I know that once you bring an open-ended subsidy, you are bringing inefficiency into the system.
Point taken. Mr. Tyagi, yes.
Yeah, if I may add, of course, skilling of workers or is very important to enhance your capabilities or competence. As an SIC, we have 8 technical centers in various places all over India. And Ministry of MSME, through its DC office, also has various technical centers which are being upgraded with the help of World Bank, and a lot of advanced technologies are coming up there for skilling up of the people. And skilling of the people is very important. And what we do in our technical center is we take a demand from the industry, what kind of people they need. And based on that, we devise our courses. We skill the industry workers also based on their demand. So it's upskilling of people is very important. And we are working on that also.
Yeah, Vinod.
And on subsidy, I would say, yes, of course, subsidy should not be the major part. But to increase the population of exporters or MSMEs, I think somewhere you need to give them some kind of a catalyst. It's a kind of a catalyst support for a time period. And then once they stand on their own, then they have to take over from there. So I think that is the role of subsidy.
Point taken.
I'm just, no, sorry. I was just tempted to make one point on skilling. And as Mr. Mishra mentioned earlier, this whole information is actually the bedrock on which this whole skilling, this precision marketing will work. Unfortunately, last budget, there was a provision that came in where the FM announced that information about exports and imports, specifically of individual nature, will be banned. It's now illegal to be using that information. The point I'm making is, in a world where China sells you that information, so I have a website at China in portal where they sell exactly the information I want. In fact, when that guy made this sales pitch to me about that information bank, he was actually shocked me. I mean, he got my interest in 5 minutes. Because what he did is, he says, you know what, Mr. Sharma, you buy some epoxy powder. You don't buy it from China, but you buy it from Korea. This is the last 5 years of how much epoxy powder you were buying from which company in Korea. The graphs were drawn, the consumption, the rates, kilos, tons per month, all that data was there. And by the way, in China, there are 4 suppliers who also can help you and who can bring down your price by about 15%. Here are the addresses. This was a sales pitch to me. Unfortunately, in our country, for whatever reasons, I'm sure government has a good reason for doing that, we decided that it's not going to be shared. Now, in an age where we use information as gold.
Let me tell Mr. Sharma, it's a two-way sword.
I totally agree.
Entirely, because this is something which we push for that. It was unnecessary generating competition amongst the Indians, and in the process, country was losing out. If I was knowing that Mr. Sharma is supplying to X supplier at $10, I was reducing the price to $9.9 to get the business. In the process, country is suffering. So that's why this has been brought down.
Yeah.
But the data in the terms of statistical information is still in the public domain, and what Mr. Mishra says, it can be analyzed also.
Sorry, Mr. Sahai, the point I'm making is you're absolutely right. Now what has happened is India doesn't get $10 or $9.9 anymore because the Chinese is getting $9.5. He knows exactly what I'm doing. So all I'm saying is, yes, ban all the information. provided China also bans it. Provided we can exercise the ban across the world. Now, if you're saying everybody else can look into my data, and I cannot look into their data, I think we are making a very big mistake.
No, but China can access the data with reference to supply which has gone
No,
to
no, no,
China,
no. No,
not
sir,
for the...
Sorry,
So-
I beg
so-
to differ, but
No, but the-
today he has information about whatever we do in the world.
It may be a leakage from the system.
No,
but
it's customs data.
I guess
Absolutely.
there could be different processes,
it's
and
our
we are guided by our processes. But
Sure. That was the idea. I was trying to do that.
I think I'll only add to the question which you asked.
I will just, we're testing Bhupen's patience. So one thing, and then I'll pass on to you. One question which I had just on some of the products discussion we had. Just bear with me for a minute. So Bhupen, we spoke about products and how important it is, a product category as was being mentioned also earlier. So when you look at e-commerce and being part of the largest e-commerce company, so first question is, when I look at e-com exports, should I drive my strategy from a product category based? And second part of it is, when you look at, again, online exports, how do you see B2B and B2C? So.
Sure. You can hear me, right? Okay. As actually I was listening to all the points that were being made, I think the biggest difference that comes when you're dealing with offline versus e-commerce exports is that the access to data and technology, whether it is marketplaces like Amazon or somebody else, is just disproportionate, right? So the way we are encouraged to think about serving the MSME space in Amazon is very simple. Take scale out of the equation, and all the benefits that large players would typically get should be available to the lowest common denominator. And I'll give you a very simple example. Access to marketplaces, right? So today when you list on Amazon, Amazon ships to all the countries in the world, right? So whether you're on .com or .co or .uk, your products are available everywhere. You really don't have to go into this marketing offline exercise of figuring out who your buyers need to be and so on. When you're creating a listing, which language do you create the listing in? If you give me English data, can I list it in German? Can I list it in Japanese? Can I list it in Spanish? Can I list it in Portuguese? All of that technology is available to each and every person. When I'm creating logistics, right, if you try to get a shipment out, everybody knows it just takes 60 to 100 emails on an average when we did the offline benchmarking to just get a shipment across codes, recodes, scheduling, rescheduling, and so on. Or cross-border payments and the rates that you get and so on. All of this, with the use of technology, is completely available to each and every person. So when you're making a choice of which product to list, you can actually place a few bets, right? Like if I say I am generally in the apparel space, I can decide with Amazon, I can list shirts, I can list women's apparel, I can list children's clothes, and I can decide at a very small level, should I ship 10 units, 100 units? And should I keep the inventory in my warehouse? Should I keep the inventory in Amazon warehouse? All of these decisions that businesses deal with on an everyday basis. The general premise is if I start going smaller and smaller, I'll become cost ineffective and therefore I will lose scale. But marketplaces like Amazon have taken that out of the way for everyone, right? So as we get into some of these conversations, e-commerce specifically from a B2C perspective becomes a lot more sort of efficient, agile marketplace, right? And that is an aspect that I think this group can expand to even more. This anxiety around what sells is actually available, because when we provide market intelligence on categories, you know exactly what that end consumer wants, right? And that is the ability that a technology provider like Amazon, which combines logistics, cross-border payments with the ecosystem around here, can do. What we are looking for is people who look at this information and tune their products to the what market they want to do. So if you are selling electronic components, or if you are saying robotic components, you know what the trends are because the data that the customer clicks is showing is now available and it is democratized. It's not that you're a large player and you have access to it, or you're a small player, you don't have it. So in general, I see technology being a big equalizer, B2C space is going to benefit more dramatically from it. Of course, B2B is also scaling hugely in that aspect, but because B2C, the transaction volumes are smaller, I think it's going to benefit indirectly, it's going to benefit more disproportionately.
I think the message from you is clear. For B2C, it has to be online exports.
Yeah, I think
and B2B
it is
also
completely friction free, right? Like you can just test a market. Today we've had sellers who are, in fact, I was just talking to somebody. We have exporters out of 200 cities in India now. These are not just in the NCR region or Bangalore or Mumbai. We have exporters from Haridwar, we have exporters from Udaipur, we have exporters from Erode. And they are very, very savvy, actually. They know that they have a product and they know how to sort of list. All the education that we have to do is digital marketing of it. How do you sort of analyze customer data patterns? And so that aspect, I think B2C is just going to scale dramatically.
Interesting. Shekhar, back to you. I think you wanted to.
Yes, I was adding on the point of skill, and the skill will generally be there if you are able to, if each of the exporter is able to understand product and technology. And in the current world with data which is available and the reach which is there available for every market, we have a better opportunity in terms of now, I think, marching forward compared to, I think, earlier. We can't blame it on scale is where I think my thought comes in. It has to be, if you are an exporter, you would generally invest your time, energy into the tech and the product which is required by the customer. The whole objective is that you tune your people, which is, I think, your employees, to adapt to that. In my mind, the challenge is identification, working on that product and technology, and less on, I think, skilling or reskilling. I think that's my thought.
Yeah.
So
or actually just change the skilling of your team to sort of be a lot more digital savvy, right? And I think that's an important aspect. I think, yes, there is core skills around sourcing, optimization, manufacturing process, and so on. But this whole new approach will just open you to 2 billion customers worldwide, as against the pocket ones that you might target.
So, Shekhar mentioned the word adapt, and I was just going to ask you in terms of how have you seen, people in India adapting this for business? Again, you mentioned there is a potential B2C. So how have industry and any messages for the audience here to adapt to this newer technology? Because, there is always this fear, I am still not interacting with the end customer. So I need that FaceTime. I need to be connected. Now, you're just relying on a platform to connect to the customer. So how is that adaptation in your sense happened in India?
It's interesting you mentioned how entrepreneurs are adopting. I'll give you a couple of examples, right? Let's just take some of the things that are working really, really well on online space, which is the D2C brands. For example, brands who are selling millet products, right? Or brands that are now starting to sell, ashwagandha and that type of stuff. How do you sort of drive and communicate the value of these products? It's not really just the pricing, right? And how do you communicate that value to different customers? Digital tracks that customers leave in terms of how they have looked at the information on a marketplace like Amazon use in a big way. So if you look at Slurp Farm, which is one of a good D2C brand on Amazon platform and of course elsewhere, they have actually arrived at a synthesis that when I market millet, the way I market it in India versus UK versus America is different. The demographic that I market to, whether it is young moms or whether it is the elderly, is very different. How is that possible? It's because people have become savvy about using the digital footprints that customers have left you. And therefore, you can target things differently. You can create coupons if you want. So you can create targeted promotions. You don't have to drop prices if the willingness to pay is not there, or you want to create a tactical sort of a promotion for 2 weeks, right? And that's how this adaptability is getting sort of becoming almost second nature to some of these brands.
Mr. Sahai, you have.
No, I just like to supplement is here raise a very valid point in differentiation of the product. Let me just give you 2 examples. I was in Germany, and the person who was selling turmeric, he was selling turmeric at 5 times the price, saying that's a turmeric latte. You can add to the milk, it can be turned out to be latte. In Switzerland, the same turmeric was being put into a capsule as a health supplement at 5 times the cost. So this is the kind of value addition, I think, which you can provide to that. I entirely agree with him. I'm a great fan of e-commerce marketplace, particularly for a country like India, where you have small businesses, you have artisans, you have craftsmen, you have women entrepreneurs. And as a newcomer, what you are looking for, you want a bar and you want to insure against payment. This platform provides you the both. In fact, I was talking to some of the youngsters in Indore. I was surprised. Each one of them, they are all below 30 years of age. Each one of them was exporting $10 million of mattresses from Indore to US. I was never aware of that. And that was being done, though still there are a lot of challenges in e-commerce also, so far as regulatory parts are concerned.
I'll only add 2 data points on adaptability. The people from, I think, cities C, D, and E have better digital adoption when we see in our database. They open their bank account in 3 minutes, and you will see that we open around more than, I think, 25,000 of them every day. It is not the people who are very, very knowledgeable, English-speaking, and tech-savvy guy. And why? I think there is a value, and there is, I think, something which you need, you are able to adapt. You see the same part when they want to do on the exporters and importers who may probably be more traditional in nature, but when they adopt, they see a value in digital solutions. I think their adaptability is at times better than cities. And which is a very, very important differentiator, and no skills required. I guess they learn. Fortunately, I think technology is able to help them to learn them fast.
So I guess the technology adaptation is there, and also going back to the first point that we should not sell cheap. I think there is value clearly which you can derive in the export market. I know we are short of time. We'll have some Q&A, but before I go there, Sahai, I can come back to you again. Take the easy way out. Maybe you want to spend or summarize a few takeaways for the audience here after hearing all this.
My takeaway for the discussion is that no size fits all is true for the export marketing. We have the conventional marketing stalwarts and the modern marketing gurus who treat the problem differently. For a conventional marketing stalwarts, market size, market growth, market distance are the key issues. Because market size, if it is big, you can achieve the economy of scale. If a market is growing, you know the demand is growing. Market distance is a factor because at times freight or the logistics may make a difference to that. Historically speaking, various studies have shown that any additional distance of 1,000 kilometers reduces the trade by 15%. To me, when I'm looking into the entire marketing exercise, I would like the SMEs to focus on the top importing market, top emerging importing market, top market for India's exports, and top emerging market for India's export with compound annual growth rate trend. Look into the market access issues also, whether the technical standards, sanitary and phytosanitary standard, packaging and labeling requirements, certification requirement are met by you. Look into the competitors' strength in the market. It is not that you are competitive, how the other is competitive. And there, I think the role of free trade agreement comes into play. We are trading with around 195 countries. With 70 countries, India also have a free trade or comprehensive economic partnership agreement. Focus on that country. We have recently signed an ACTA with Australia. On 98.3% of the tariff line, we have got zero duty. In the next 5 years, it will be zero. For UAE, where we have signed in May, we have got zero duty on 90% of the tariff line. Next 5 years, it will be 97.3% of the tariff line. We may be firming up with UK, Canada, Israel, GCC this year. And these markets will either give you the level playing field if your competitors also have a zero duty, or you will be a notch up if they are not having a duty. I personally feel that the e-commerce can also be a great indicator. If you are selling on the e-commerce, let us say 200 shipments a month, and assuming 60, 70 shipments inquiries are coming from the US, you can treat that US is a market for you because product has adaptability and you are competitive into the market. That can be very important one. For the modern the marketing guru, they say that leave the top 10 market if you want to make an early inroads. Look into the emerging market. Because if you can make an entry into an emerging market, meet the standard and quality requirement, over a period of time, you should look into the top market, because the top markets, they require a volume and they require a quality also. The last point, I think that in today's context is very important, an additional factor. What is the foreign exchange reserves of the country? Today we are seeing the market like Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Nepal, they hardly have a foreign exchange reserve. The entire Africa wants to trade only on confirmed LC because the government wants in advance to know what is their foreign exchange commitment. So I think it has to be a 360-degree approach, and for each product, for each company, the strategy has to be different.
Thank you, sir. I think that's really helpful. I, again, just getting tempted to go back to Shekhar on one question before we pass on to the audience. So, as one point came up, there are again headwinds. We hear about US recession or interest rates again. Any caution points for there, since it came up that, while sir said you should target emerging markets, there are mature markets like US, you need to be cautious. And now, well, we all endeavor to get the dollars in, but any caution points out there from your banker's lens?
I think I'll say that from India, and I think India's exports, no caution. I think there's a good opportunity. You create the value, and there is a good market over there. And this comes on when you are 2% of the world's total exports, then the opportunity is 98%. Is there some amount of slowdown in US and in Europe? I think Europe, I'll say yes. I have with a caution that one has to be cautious. There are cost pressures which are significantly higher over there. The capacities of consumption will get affected. US seems good as on today, and yes, with a few pluses and the headwinds, I think they should be able to, I think, make it the markets are a great indicator in terms of, I think, what they feel, what they think. But as far as we are concerned, I think our green spaces become, I think, Africa, good, I think, good amount of US, Southeast Asia, and you can take, I think, a good amount of contributions which has, where I think China is, I think, giving up, or a few other areas even, because India seems to be looking better in terms of governance index. It seems to be doing better in terms of manufacturing index. It needs to grow up on the so-called as quantity index, if I were to call. I think you need to ensure that the quantity is large enough to serve to the entire world.
Thank you. Thank you. I think with that, maybe we can just take some questions from the audience if there are.
Clarification on this data issues, because I think I'm the right person, and I am struggling a lot on this, and it gives me a nightmare experience sometimes, because we fight with our own authorities also in the government. See, suppose it's a global tender, and one party is applying for, and the whole world applying for. Take it, like in a government tender. If I disclose what is there in your sealed cover, what will happen to, the process of selection, or the business interest, how it will be hampered. You can imagine, same thing with the individual data. Although my friend Ajay already Ajay bata diye, it is our take. It's an official statistics position. So what is available in the dark net with some price and all that, such mails also come to us, and I do handle these data leakage issues and complaints every month, at least 10 to 15, through PMO, through other. Make it clear, I'll make it very clear. Aggregated data is available everywhere in the public domain for all consumption. This is a public good. Official statistics is a public good. But individual data is a commercially sensitive trade data, cannot be shared with each other, just like a tender document. If I share, what will happen? So I have Mr. X and Mr. Y. If I say this is his data is the foreigner suppliers whom he is supplying, at what price he is supplying, then it is an issue. And for your kind information, this data is very sensitive and kept with only Digi system CBIC. It is not shared with DGCIS, which compiles data sourcing from Digi system, IceGate, SCZ, everywhere. These foreigner details are not available with us. Even if it is available, we are not going to disclose. We have only importer-exporter information, transactionable data available with us in DGCIS, Calcutta, in Department of Commerce. That is only for statistical purpose, for analysis purpose, for compilation purpose, and for custody. And being Indian Statistical Service officers, we have been given the mandate to not to disclose this individual data of any kind, forget about trade data, and under the Collection of Statistics Act, which is all pervasive and really restricts us for supplying such data. But you know, in business world, everything is available with a price, underhand dealing. If such data is available in the internet with the Chinese source and other source, we are sorry. Then we are trying to check it, but we have not been able to check. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir, for that.
Hello, yeah, Pravesh on this side. We are under the compulsion from the WTO. That's why we are reducing our subsidies day by day. That's what my question. And we are, if I talk about the textile segment, Bangladesh is our big competitor, and now we are nowhere in terms of China. So how about it? If we reduce our subsidy in such kind.
The question is around subsidy. If the subsidies are reducing and our competition is from Bangladesh, how do we compete? And
So in fact, one of the advantage which Bangladesh right now has, that Bangladesh is the least developed country. They get zero duty when they export to the rest of the world. Bangladesh will graduate out of this from 2024, 2025. So the tariff advantage will no longer be there for the Bangladesh. Please bear in mind that Bangladesh has only one industry as of now, that is apparel sector. They are very competitive. We need to work on that. We need to work on the man-made segment also, because our textile sector is too much dependent on natural fiber. That's why you must have seen that now in the new production link incentive scheme, government has brought the man-made fiber into that. They have also brought into the technical textile, because these are the promising sectors for India. I've been given to understand there are a lot of demand to extend the PLI scheme for the garment sector also. They are looking into, with a lower threshold limit, maybe of 30 crore investment and 100 crore investment, so that more investment should play into that. Let me raise a very vital issue, and that problem which I think everyone has to apply is with the profile of India's exports. We call it a problem of 30-70 against 70-30. 70% of my exports are to a segment which just contribute to 30% of the global imports. 30% of my exports are to a segment where there is 70% global imports is happening. For example, today, machinery, electrical and electronics, and automobile, they contribute to 35% of the global imports with a whopping size of around $7 trillion. In this segment, my share is just 0.8%. I do agree that the labor-intensive sectors are extremely important for creating jobs into the country, and that's why we feel that we should have a two-pronged strategy. One, to support the traditional sector of exports, to generate jobs into the country. But if you are looking into a figure of $1 trillion of export, you have to push the sunrise sector of exports. The silver lining has been that PLI sector, the PLI scheme cover all these segments. So I think we should look into, and SMEs in particular should look into how we can increase our exports into the sunrise sectors of exports. In fact, some of the segment where electronic sectors, they have done remarkably well, and that is reflected in his data also. Let me just also address the issue of the data, because he said this, the SMEs exports are growing by 5.7%, the overall export is growing by around 8.5 and 9 up to December. But please bear in mind that 15% of India's exports is just petroleum. which is too dominated by the large companies, they are growing at 50%. So if 15%, you have got 50%, 7.5% out of whatever 8-9% they've recorded is out from petroleum. Therefore, in a way, SMEs have performed much better than the large companies.
Great. I think, again, the message out here is clear that look at the rising sectors, electronics, auto components, and all just to add the way India is entering into free trade agreements with UK, EU. Clearly, there is an opportunity where Bangladesh could be getting today duty incentives that will come. We'll be on par. So we'll be actually talking about upskilling, cost effectiveness, and all those parameters. Yeah. Yeah.
I think I'll only tell, I'll only tell that to everyone over here, I think please prepare for competing with Bangladesh because their advantage is going to go away in 2024. Yeah.
Okay.
So I think that is only probably 8 to 9 months of, until that time you can invest and start preparing.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry. No, I just wanted to make one point. Mr. Sahai very rightly mentioned the PLI. Unfortunately, the PLI is beyond a lot of SMEs' reach. And which is why one of the things that maybe a panel like this can recommend to the government is to look at a PLI structuring for SMEs. So you said 30 crores as an investment threshold. Many would not qualify because of that. So unfortunately, that's one. Secondly, when we look at also this partly, I would say, retraction of globalization. So I won't get into that debate right now. But there is some countries are looking at deglobalization as a strategy, nearshoring. And there again, the SMEs stand to lose. So I think for these two factors, we have to rethink the strategy for SMEs as different from large companies.
And then we leave those points with Mr. Tyagi to look at it, how best there could be some of the PLIs for the SMEs. And the scheme is really doing well, but yeah, we need to, I think there was a...
I just want to add one thing, like as Mr. Sahai said, like we are exporting on, we are concentrating more on consumer products. I think we have a capability of exporting machineries also. So MSMEs can look into that aspect also and start exporting machineries also. So look for that market.
Thank you. So we'll take a quick last question,
Sir,
please.
my question is to Mr. Tyagi, Mr. Sahai, and Mr. Mishra sitting over there. You see, I want to know what step has been taken to promote the export one district, one product, which was announced by the Honorable Prime Minister 2 years back. And as per my information, 270 districts and 270 products has been identified as per the GEM report. So, because that is a very bright area and where Prime Minister wants that India export should increase from these. So what specific this item and the action program has been taken? My question is to Mr. because he is head of the FIEO and you are from MNSI and then Mr. is sitting over there.
Fine. Let me respond to your question.
So I'll just request, we're running out of time. A short answer would be...
I think one district, one product, the products have been identified. This scheme has been merged into a broad scheme of district as an export hub, where government is promoting to create the infrastructure at the district level, identify the supply side challenges into that. The government of India has already done a study for around 600 out of 728 districts. The district export promotion committees have been formed. We have been given to understand that a cabinet mode has been moved for getting the fund for operationalization of the scheme, probably on a pilot basis to start with 50 or 100 districts. The scheme will be rolled in. So we are just awaiting for that to be notified. And so far as the one district, one product scheme is concerned, the products have been identified. The product has been identified by different ministries also, but the scheme will be integrated into a district as an export hub scheme.
With this, I'd like to thank all the panelists and thanks Financial Express for giving us this opportunity. All the panelists are there and happy to connect you, happy to connect with all of them of the dais, please. Thank you.